Chapter 1, What's Happening? Here I am, out for a run. I'm not much of a runner, but I need something to distract me from Brienne. I messed up, big time. I cheated on her, and now she knows. God, I love her so much. Why was I so stupid? Maybe there's truth to what women say about men thinking with their dicks instead of their brains. Or that saying about blood flow, you can only send it to either your brain or your dick, not both. It all started with that dumb boys' night out. Married guys like me shouldn't go to these things, especially if there are other women around. The conversation always turns to sex, and guys like me get worked up. I barely remember her name, Sylvia, or something. All I know is she was out with her girlfriends, and they all started dancing. Damn, she had a smoking hot body, but I should have had more self-control. I'm a married man, for God's sake. Like I said, I was thinking with my dick. Watching her bend over in that miniskirt and lacy panties was too much for me. I grabbed her ass, and she didn't object. My buddies were cheering me on. During a slow dance, I lifted her skirt and slipped my hands down her panties, showing everyone her ass. Her friends and my buddies were all laughing. I felt like the man. I led her into the women's restroom and a cubicle. She took off her panties and stuffed them into my pocket. I unzipped and sat on the toilet with her on my lap. I had sex with her right there in the restroom. It didn't last long before I finished. I left while she cleaned up. When I came out, everyone was laughing. That's when it hit me, I had cheated on Brienne in front of everyone. I waited for Sylvia to come out so I could apologize and explain what a mistake it was. But when I did, she just laughed it off and said it was no big deal. She told me to forget about it. But I went home feeling awful. Sylvia didn't seem to care, but I knew I had messed up, and I promised myself I'd never let myself get into that situation again. When I got home, Brie, I call her, asked if I had a good time. I told her it was okay, but I would have rather stayed home with her. She thought that was sweet and kissed me. But then she felt something in my pocket and asked me what it was. Oh God, it was Sylvia's panties. Show me what's in your pocket, Jeff. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Sylvia's panties, intending to explain the situation to Brie. But she didn't listen. Instead, she stared at me and ran to our bedroom. So, here I am, out running at 11 o'clock at night. When I returned home, I found the door unlocked. I was sure Brie would have locked me out. I approached the bedroom door and tried to open it, but it was locked. Leave me alone. I can't talk to you now. Please just leave me alone. We'll talk about our marriage tomorrow, I heard her voice, trembling as if she was crying, from inside the bedroom. Maybe it's best for me to sleep in the spare room tonight. I can gather my thoughts and hopefully she'll be more willing to listen tomorrow. After taking a shower, I settled down to sleep in the spare bedroom. Brie and I were sort of childhood sweethearts. We had our fair share of breakups and makeups. By the time I turned 21 and Brie turned 20, we decided to stay together and tied the knot. We've been married for almost 3 years now. I consider myself lucky to have married Brie. She's a real catch, a beautiful woman who caught the eye of many guys in school. Despite our ups and downs, whenever we split, we both couldn't stop thinking about each other. There was this jock at school, Steve, who always tried to come between us. He was the cocky type, but Brie thought he was a decent guy. Some of the other girls did too. But in the end, Brie chose me, which made me feel like I'd won. Brie was on birth control because we weren't ready to start a family just yet. We figured we'd wait a bit before trying. Some of her friends were already married with kids, and they kept telling her how fulfilling motherhood was. But Brie was in her 20s, she had plenty of time to think about all that. I worked at the factory, a major car manufacturer, where the pay was good, and I had great benefits. Eventually, I became a journeyman and started working as a pipe fitter. I owe a lot to my dad, who'd been with the company for 30 years. Babysitting her sister's kids gave Brie some extra cash, and she didn't really feel like job hunting. I worried that if she worked elsewhere, someone might steal her away from me. I'd had nightmares about losing her, but she always reassured me it wouldn't happen. I had a terrible night's sleep or what passed for sleep, tossing and turning, consumed with fear of losing Bree because of my stupidity. I wasn't sure how she'd react or what she might decide. When Sunday morning came, I got up and started the coffee. I heard Bree unlock the bedroom door and emerge, fully dressed. She told me she'd cried all night, trying to decide if we should stay together or part ways. "Bree, please don't talk like that. I love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I promise it won't happen again. I'll do anything to make it up to you, but please don't leave me," I pleaded. Bree asked for the full story, and I told her the truth. Lying would only make matters worse, especially since I'd already admitted my mistake. She asked if any of my friends had done the same thing. There were 5 of us in total, and 2 of them were married to her friends. I assured her that while I saw them dancing, I didn't witness anyone else having sex. She asked if I was telling her the truth. I assured her I was, admitting I felt guilty and left before anyone else. Then she inquired about protection, whether I used a condom. It hadn't even crossed my mind. I explained that I never carry condoms because we don't use them, and I never intended to have sex with anyone else. She questioned if there was a condom machine in the restroom. I assumed there probably was, but didn't get any. That's all she said for the moment. She informed me I could sleep in the spare room until she decided what to do. I needed to get tested for STDs before she would consider anything further, and even then, she might decide it was over between us. She mentioned she was going out and would return in the evening, heading to her mom's to get away from me for a while. After she left, I reflected on my foolishness, wondering how I could convince her I was serious about never cheating again. The phone rang, and it was Bree's mom, asking for her. I was about to inform her she was on her way there when she interrupted, saying it was all right and they wouldn't be back until Monday, extending their stay at her sister's. I agreed to pass along the message. Considering calling Bree on her cell, I opted against it. She wanted space, so I shouldn't intrude. It surprised me she didn't know her mom was away for the weekend, given their closeness. I needed to clear my head, so I took a drive in my pickup, contemplating things. Maybe I'd buy Bree some flowers from the mall. I drove by her mom's house, finding it empty. Considering dinner, I called Bree, and after a few rings, she answered, recognizing it was me. "Bree, I thought maybe we could go out to eat later. Mom already has dinner on. I'm staying here. I don't want to be near you right now." She mentioned possibly not coming home until late, then hung up. Where was she? Why lie about being at her mom's? Was she trying to get back at me, or was she with her friends? It didn't make sense. I knew where most of her friends lived. Should I check if she was there? But why was I even considering this? I was the one who cheated. Why was I checking up on her? I decided to pass by Casey's place since it was on my route home. Casey was one of Bree's closest friends, so if Bree went anywhere, it would likely be there. As I approached, I noticed Bree's car parked outside. I couldn't face her right now. I pulled over a few houses away to reflect on my mistakes. Another car pulled up, and to my dismay, it was Sylvia from the bar last night. How did Bree even have her number? I could hardly recall her name, let alone her last name. I hadn't mentioned her last name because I didn't know it myself. Sylvia was greeted by Casey and Bree at the curb before they all entered the house. I felt a knot in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I drove home, needing to sort through my thoughts. A few hours later, Casey called urgently. "Jeff, we need to talk. It's important." Confused, I asked, "What's going on, Casey? Is Bree still with you?" "She left about 10 minutes ago." "Please, Jeff, I need to see you in person." Concerned, I probed, "What about? And what do you mean by setup?" Casey pleaded, "Not over the phone. Please meet me. You know I care about you, Jeff." I hesitated, wary of another setup, but I knew Casey had feelings for me, and I reciprocated. "All right, Casey. Let's meet around the corner from your place in 20 minutes. Relieved, Casey agreed, "Okay, I'll be there." I circled around Casey's block twice, cautious to ensure it wasn't a setup. There seemed to be no reason for it. I spotted Casey standing beside a large elm tree and pulled up to her. She climbed into the truck, and I decided to drive around as we talked. "What's going on, Casey? And why are you telling me this?" I inquired. "Let me answer the second question first, Jeff. I've always cared about you. Even though you were with Bree, I never interfered. But what she's doing to you now is wrong. I couldn't bear to see her hurt you. And, Jeff, I have to confess something. I've always loved you," Casey admitted. "Casey, I knew you had feelings for me, and I felt the same, but Bree was my girlfriend and your best friend. Now, tell me what this is all about," I urged. "Bree set you up last night. She and Sylvia planned to seduce you. Sylvia is hard to resist, and Bree knew that. It was a setup," Casey revealed. "God, Casey, I felt terrible afterward. Why would Bree want me to sleep with Sylvia, and why did Sylvia agree to it?" I questioned. "Because Bree's been seeing Steve. You remember Steve, right? The jock from high school? She wants to cheat on you with him and use your indiscretion as an excuse," Casey explained. I was stunned. So my wife set me up to cover her own affair? What do I do now? "It gets worse, Jeff," Casey continued. "How could it get any worse?" I exclaimed. "Bree wants Steve to get her pregnant. She stopped taking birth control. She planned to avoid sex with you after your cheating, and if someone else impregnated her, it'd be Steve," Casey revealed. "Why would she go through all this instead of just divorcing me and marrying Steve?" I asked, bewildered. "Steve's already married, Jeff. He's married to his boss's daughter, and if he divorces her, he'd lose his job and the family money. Bree wants his genes for her baby but doesn't want to risk losing all that," Casey explained. "What's wrong with my genes? Am I that undesirable that she wouldn't want my child?" I questioned. "I would have had your baby, Jeff. I care about you that much. Bree's just fixated on Steve," Casey confessed tearfully. As we sat down to eat, I realized I married the wrong woman. Casey was the true friend, the one I could trust. After this, she planned to cut ties with Bree. Anyone capable of such manipulation wasn't a friend of hers. I dropped Casey off, and as she left the truck, she kissed me quickly before disappearing into her house. Back home, I had to pretend like I didn't know anything. When Bree arrived, I tried to salvage our marriage, pretending everything was normal, though I knew the truth. "I don't know, Jeff. You cheated on me and expect me to just move on? Maybe I should do the same," Bree retorted. I had to keep up the act. "Bree, that won't solve anything. We need to move past this. Let's start over, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you," I insisted, knowing what she planned with Steve. "Fine, Jeff. But I won't sleep with you until you've been tested. I won't risk catching something from you," Bree declared. She thought she was playing me, but I had my own plans. There was no way I'd let her sleep with Steve and then come back to me. As she walked away, I gave her a quick peck on the cheek. I couldn't help but wonder how she planned to get rid of me on Saturday for a rendezvous with her lover. But I had to wait and see. Chapter 2, Does Bree's Revenge Backfire? I went to work on Monday, knowing I had only this week to get everything organized. I called Bree and informed her that I'd be working late a couple of hours. My plan was to visit my lawyer to have divorce papers drawn up. We didn't own much, but I wanted to ensure I wouldn't be paying alimony to a cheating wife. After Saturday, she'd have to fend for herself. We rented the house so she could have that. As long as I could end the marriage without paying her anything, I'd be satisfied. Throughout the week, I canceled credit cards and moved savings accounts. She could keep the furniture. Later in the week, I'd pack most of my clothes and find a place to stay. Regarding our sex life, it had always been satisfactory. We explored various positions, but oral sex was off the table for Bree. She had a strong aversion to it, insisting her mouth was only for speaking. I didn't mind, as long as we were intimate, I was content. Occasionally, I'd perform oral sex on her, which she enjoyed, but she never reciprocated. Bree wasn't fond of many of my friends, particularly Bradley, whom she deemed slow. Despite his good intentions, she often referred to him as retarded, which irked me. After an incident where she didn't want him in our home, Bradley apologized sincerely, even buying her a card. Her reaction was dismissive, further highlighting her disdain. Reflecting on our relationship, I realized I had overlooked many of Bree's flaws due to love. However, recent events had opened my eyes to her true nature, her habit of dating during arguments, her dislike of my friends, and now her manipulation to orchestrate an affair and potentially have another man's child. Without Casey's insight, I might have remained oblivious. Towards the end of the week, Casey informed me of Bree's plan to use her as an excuse for Saturday. Bree intended to fabricate a plumbing emergency, knowing I'd readily assist a friend in need. She was exploiting our kindness and friendship for her own agenda. I confided in Casey about my intentions for Saturday, stressing that it was something I felt compelled to do. I emphasized that the less she knew, the safer she'd be. While I vowed to minimize harm, I couldn't guarantee anything. I assured her that if she chose to distance herself from me afterward, I'd understand. Her parting words were a plea for me to avoid causing harm and to ensure my own safety. After that call, we didn't speak until after Saturday. Around 4 p.m. on Saturday, the phone rang. Bree, clad in only a robe after a shower, answered and informed me it was Casey reporting a kitchen pipe had burst, flooding her home. Since it was Saturday, the plumber demanded double time. Bree reminded me that I'd rush to aid my friends in such situations. Resigned, I agreed to help, asking Bree if she wanted to accompany me to support her friend. However, she declined, citing her undressed state and the need to relax. After gathering my tools, I fetched Bradley, and we returned home quietly. Spotting an unfamiliar car outside, we entered cautiously. I instructed Bradley to remain on the couch until I summoned him, emphasizing his compliance. As voices emanated from the bedroom, I retrieved my gun and approached silently. Peering through the partially closed door, I witnessed Bree in her robe, conversing with Steve as he undressed. Her admission about marrying me out of spite for his departure to college stung deeply. The urge to intervene violently surged within me, my gun ready and loaded. As Steve prepared to join Bree on the bed, I barged in, causing them both to scream in terror as I aimed the gun at them. Steve pleaded for mercy, while Bree attempted to reason with me, suggesting we talk instead of resorting to violence. But my erratic behavior left them genuinely frightened. Addressing Steve, I questioned his willingness to risk his life for a chance with my wife. He begged for leniency, citing his family. Seeing his fear, I offered him a chance to live if he complied with my demands. Sobbing, he agreed to anything. Instructing Steve, who now stood naked and vulnerable, I ordered him to bind Bree to the bedposts. Despite her protests, he complied, and I silenced her pleas with a gag and blindfold. As Steve hesitated, I struck him with the pistol, warning him against resistance. With Steve subdued, I signaled for Bradley to enter, reminding him to remain silent. As he entered, he witnessed Bree restrained on the bed. Ignorant of Bradley's presence, Bree ceased struggling as I threatened her. Believing Steve was about to fulfill her desire for a child, Bree was unaware of Bradley's involvement as he began to touch her intimately. She couldn't discern his identity but sensed it wasn't me, bewildered by my apparent acquiescence to Steve's advances. Bradley wasted no time. As soon as Bree's arousal became evident, he penetrated her eagerly, thrusting in and out rhythmically. Bree reciprocated some of his movements, likely mistaking him for either me or Steve, her muffled sounds audible through the gag. Meanwhile, Steve was masturbating, seeking release. I gave Steve permission to climax, instructing him to remove the gag first. Bree urged Steve to continue, reveling in the sensation. However, when the blindfold was lifted, revealing Bradley, Bree panicked, pleading to be freed from him, expressing fear of bearing his child. I ordered Steve to use her mouth for release under threat of death. Despite Bree's pleas, Steve complied, hesitant but compelled by the gun's presence. Bradley ejaculated inside Bree, maintaining his arousal, while Steve climaxed in her mouth, coerced by the threat of violence. Bree, overwhelmed, struggled to swallow, choking on Steve's semen. Once finished, I instructed Bradley to dress, citing the need to address plumbing issues. Bree, disoriented and nauseated, was left vomiting by the bed, while Steve remained naked and drained, a testament to his degradation. Addressing Bree, I informed her of my decision to proceed with divorce, relinquishing my belongings and offering her the house. I acknowledged her potential recourse to the authorities, but doubted her ability to substantiate her claims. I emphasized her attainment of her desires, highlighting her involuntary encounter with Steve, despite her protests. Steve, if you're contemplating revenge, remember your family is unaware of all this. I'll leave you two to your reunion. I have to head over to fix Casey's pipes now. With that, Bradley and I exited the house. Conclusion: that was pretty much it. There wasn't much discussion. I didn't see Bree until it was time to sign the final divorce papers. She signed them without any fuss, remaining silent. Casey mentioned she's still in touch with Bree but no longer considers her a best friend, citing what she did to me. It's amusing. I asked Casey what Bree told her about that Saturday when I came home. Well, she told me you forgot some tools and when you returned, you found her with Steve. She claimed you then asked for a divorce. Steve supposedly refused to leave his wife, and Bree couldn't raise a baby alone, so she took a morning after pill to avoid pregnancy. She mentioned she got the house and its contents, but no alimony due to the short duration of your cohabitation. Oh, and Jeff, I did mention that you fixed my pipes. I didn't mention they were never broken. She asked if Bradley was with you, and I confirmed. Thanks, Casey, for covering for me. I truly appreciate it. Anytime you need your pipes cleaned, just give me a call. What about next Saturday, Jeff? Will you come over and clean my pipes then? I've been wanting you to do it for the past 5 years. It might take all day. Swing by if you're up for it. I'll be there. My tools are ready for the task ahead. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Write your opinion in the comments.